Hello everyone, I'm Ramsis.
And I'm theVespor.
Welcome to Retroception, Season 3 edition. This time we're going to look back at all 12 of our N64 Wrestling Retrospective reviews.
That's right. We wanted to give our final thoughts like we did with the baseball, and hope to get you to play some of the better games here. And we hope that you'll enjoy this, but before we start our reviews, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and
ring that bell so we can bring you a lot more where this came from in the future. So now we had 12 wrestling episodes for Season 3. They were all on the N64. 10 of them were released in the North American market. 2 bonus episodes. 1 was Japan and 1 was a hack of an existing game. So I think without further ado, we're going to get right into the crux of it. Start with the first game we did in our retrospective series for Season 3, and that was WCW vs. NWO World Tour, released in December of 1997 in the North American market.
My thoughts on this game was, this was the first N64 wrestling game that I played, and I absolutely fell in love with it because the other wrestling games before this were also cryptic and hard to use. Aki THQ came up with a wonderful control system that was easy to understand. So it had all the thrills of World Championship Wrestling, which was the biggest thing at the time with the NWO, and it was wonderful. It also brought in some lesser known wrestlers and some just creative ones. This was possibly the game that launched all future wrestling games for the N64. It had all these modes that you didn't have before and an easy control scheme, so you actually felt like you were in a game. It was absolutely fantastic, and it got me come back and keep playing, and I wanted more. And you know what? They give me more in the future.
This game had it all. What a way to start things off. Aki was an unknown entity at the time, but they were making a lot of games in Japan, and pretty much WCW was like, hey, let's get in on that. Those games seemed to be pretty good. WCW was just as big as WWF at the time, don't forget. This is 1997. So yeah, they were both competing head-to-head, and this was a great way to start things off. Now, we used Hogan and created a fun situation with Hannibal, if you guys remember, because we were hot into our 18 reviews at the time, and that was a lot of fun. But the fun of this was that you get to relive the feud that the WCW and NWO was at the time, and that was the great aspect of it. The graphics were pretty good. A lot of the N64 games you're going to see have not so great graphics and better gameplay, and a lot have better gameplay and not so good graphics. This one is sort of a nice way to start things off because the graphics are decent. They're not great, but they are decent. So it didn't have as many modes. There were 6 options, and a lot of them were nothing or just rehash of the same thing. So it was really just about the idea of playing with your favorite wrestlers from both factions at this time, WCW, NWO, and all the offshoots. So that was the fun of this game. But don't forget, this is the first N64 wrestling game in the North American market. So you had to start somewhere. And we actually gave this 4 out of 5. So we thought very highly of this game because a lot of people grew up with this game. It was one of the top selling games on the N64. And it relived all the classic feuds and moments that you wanted all in a wrestling format. So there's a great threshold to start. 4 stars. Let's see how they do with the next game. And that's going to be a WWF game for number 2.
So our second game was WWF Warzone, released August 11th, 1998. And this was the first of 2 games released that year. And this game, Warzone, compared to WCW vs. NWO World Tour, is a complete letdown. I absolutely love Stone Cold, Mankind, and I also like the fact that this game allowed you to actually make your own wrestlers like the Incredible Hulk. But gameplay is where it really lacked compared to the first one. This is where they decided that, oh, you just can't have a simple grapple button and a punch button. This is where we started to explore the ideas of doing certain moves, then grappling, and it tried to do things like before, like in the Super Nintendo games, where they were more fighting games than actual wrestling games. It had commentary, unlike the first one, and it was really fun because of the commentary, but this is where the gameplay takes a lot away from the actual game. Yes, there are more modes here, but they were limited. You can see that they're throwing weapons in the ring here, and I can't even pick up Owen Hart to do anything with Mankind because I kept picking up the weapons instead of the wrestlers. So it had a lot of work to be done here. But that being said, it's definitely not the worst game that I played in this series. I did like the fact I could play all my favorite WWF wrestlers in a format that was not crippling and was actually semi-fun to play.
Yeah, this is a very middle-of-the-road game. And that doesn't surprise us because this was made by Acclaim. Yes, Acclaim, very infamous for making mediocre games, and this is no exception. But graphically, it's impressive. You know, some may argue that the graphics look a little better for the wrestlers in this game than they did for WCW versus NWO. But is graphics enough to make a game better? Absolutely not. That's not enough to make a game fun. It's a good way to show off the abilities of the system, but not enough to make the gameplay better. Now, we had a lot of fun with this. We had player versus players, like we had Austin going as Hart. We had weird weapon matches. We had custom. So we really tried to have fun with this. We tried to look at, but it's just, there's something wrong with this game. It's like all you're doing is diminishing a health bar over and over again. Like the colors keep changing from one shade of green, then they'll go to lighter green and lighter green and lighter green. And they're gonna keep doing this for 10 minutes or however long it takes until that thing's depleted to red. You had some fun commentary. Vince McMahon was in the background making all sorts of comments, so that was actually a fun thing. And all the costume choices were great in this game, so they tried, but the moves are just so hard and cryptic to get off in this game that it really ruins the game a little bit. And that's Acclaim's fault. They just didn't know what they were doing. They were trying to do some Mortal Kombat stuff in here, and keep it simple, stupid is what we here at Vespor Retro Reviews believe in. So, not a great game, not a great start for WWF. They too would get better. We gave this game 2.5 stars when all was said and done. And I think that was us being very generous because we were like, well, it had some good things. The graphics looked great. It had some good background and some good modes going on here. But that's all it really had. This is nowhere near as good as WCW vs. NWO that came before it. And it just also was laggy and sluggish. You would try to pick up the wrestler, you'd pick up items, you'd try to move things. The stunning was a weird effect. Like they would pause and then just suddenly collapse when you're trying to do stuff. You walk through things. It was just very weird how this game was. But for a WWF game, for the first one, it's not terrible. If you want to use all your favorite WWF wrestlers, you can't go wrong in Warzone. The game number 3 in our N64 Wrestling Game Retrospective was WCW Nitro Revenge. This is the direct follow-up to WCW vs. NWO World Tour. This one came out in October of 1998. And yeah, this is pretty much WCW vs. NWO World Tour on steroids. They added everything that was missing in the original game and improved on so much. It's Aki again, released by THQ in the North American market. It definitely has a lot more options here. Graphics are better. I mentioned that the graphics weren't great in the original one. They did improve the graphics. Much more involved here. You have more modes, you have more depth, you have more story. Still no commentary, so that's because it was used in the Aki engine. They didn't want to just suddenly add in something that didn't exist. That's the problem. So the Aki game didn't have it, this game's not going to have it. But still, it's great. We did handicap modes, we did single and tag team. We customized some characters and we looked at some fun options. Now, the wrestling is just as good as you remember in this, and that's what helps this game. But the action is there. They went with the spirit meters again, and it's all colorful, bright. You definitely get to choose from so many different arenas in the WCW universe. But it's really just a rehash of WCW vs. NWO, just much harder. The difficulty is ramped up greatly here. The normal difficulty in this one versus the previous one is like night and day. Much harder. So you're going to be in for a long match here if you want to play just on the regular modes of this game.
Yeah, this game was on another level of difficulty. The roster was bigger, and it did offer a little bit of customability, like Ramsey said. But for me, it's the gameplay. And the graphics do help. For example, we now have a moving crowd here. Although they look like paper cutouts, it's still fun. Some of them have intros. They don't get the music right, but they do have intros. We played as the Mega Powers versus the Hart Foundation. This is what you want. You want to feel like you're these wrestlers doing these moves. Yes, this is more blocky, but they look like the wrestlers. I give it a wonderful 4 stars. Just as good as the first, improved a little bit. This is not like some of the other games to come where there is no such thing as a learning curve because you will never learn how to do it because the game won't let you. I feel it's one of the best that you're going to ever play on the N64. If you love gameplay and you love story arcs, this really respected what was going on at that time in the WCW.
And now to move to something that does not respect the WCW era and should not be played normally or by anybody. We have game number 4 in our wrestling retrospective, WCW Nitro. Also released by THQ, but not, and I must stress this, not made by Aki. This is a very inferior and poorly made game, and one of the worst I think we ever had to experience on this system.
Oh boy, this was a mess of a game. You're going to actually see something here with this one like you did in the others. Digitized faces, and you actually get real pictures of them on here, and the graphics are probably the best that you're going to see at this point in the wrestling games. But here's where we have some problem, folks. The game is very, very limited. 16 wrestlers in a very limited format. We have tournament, battle royale, and single player, and that's it. We had more options in the first game in WCW versus NWO World Tour. Gameplay is not good here. Don't you remember those wonderful games from back on the Super Nintendo and before where your life bars mattered? Well, it's this game. Get them down low enough, just pin, you win. And to do the finishing move is, of course, a wonderful series of buttons that you have to hit to do it, just like in Mortal Kombat. Boy, oh, this game is so frustrating. Words cannot describe how bad this stupid game is. And as much as I made fun of the cardboard cutouts in the previous game, oh no, look at these folks. These literally look like cardboard cutouts standing right there waiting for you. The feeling, it's truly worthy of a 1.5 star. It is playable, it looks good, but compared to every game before it, it's a nightmare.
The controls are horrible, there's clipping issues, the moves don't work right, it's overly complicated, it's not fun, it's quiet, you feel like you're wrestling in the middle of like a void in the middle of nowhere, the crowd looks fake, the ring looks wrong, the wrestlers move awkwardly. They had 16 wrestlers and they were all big names, WCW at the time, which is fine, but that's not enough to make a good game. WCW just wanted to get another game out while it's popular. This was released in February of 1999, so yeah, they already had a game out previously a few months earlier, so like, oh, we'll just get another one out while the iron is hot. Boy, what a bad game this is. And there's a reason why this is the only time this company will make a wrestling game this series here, because it's just that bad. There's just nothing lovable about this game. And I heard the PS1 version's even funnier because they have video shots of the wrestlers taunting you and telling you to select them. So the N64 is an even dumbed down version of a bad game, if that makes any sense. Nothing fun here. You only buy this if you're a completionist and you want every wrestling game. 1.5 was generous. We gave it that just because it was a complete game. You could do things in it. It's playable, whatever. But that's about all we could say on this. I wouldn't play this ever again. I wouldn't wish this on anyone ever again. Why would he even buy this? It makes no sense that this game even exists. Let's just move on to the next one. I think we've said enough on this.
Now we're moving on to number 5 in our Wrestling Retrospective, which is WWF Attitude, released August 31st, 1999, and it was made by Acclaim, folks. So here's the thing to remember. When Acclaim gets it, you're going to get some great customization at the cost of gameplay. For this one, I had fun and made yourself from the Nintendo's WWF WrestleMania Challenge. Oh look! It's going to give us that wonderful move set list here, as you can see, and it doesn't work. We literally did everything right, and you sometimes get lucky, get a body slam or a neck breaker, or what would most likely happen is you do an armbar. This is one of the worst games because everything you did almost always did an armbar, or pushed their hands over their heads and overpowered them. It didn't really matter. You know what did work? Taking and using the Mortal Kombat controls as Street Fighter controls, and you start doing moves. By the way, you don't see any of those on this move list. I like to think of this as WWF armbar.
Yeah, this game is average. It looks impressive. I love the customization on this where you can create your own wrestler. That was the best part. You could really fine-tune what you wanted, and I give them props on that, because that's what you want in a wrestling game. You're playing this on the N64, and that we were able to recreate the guy from a Nintendo game, that shows you that the options are pretty good. The problem is the moves are just so hard to get off. This is not fun. Who wants to just be struggling to get moves off, and it's just such a mess to try to get anything to happen in this game. Eventually we were able to get everything off when we just started fumbling around and randomly doing things. That's not a fun wrestling game. It's just half-hearted, half-complete. There's no real heart or soul to this game. Did they have a full roster? Yes. Did they have a lot of options? Yes. But why is it always just half-hearted? Why is it always like, we'll give you something, but not that extra step to make this fun? A color bar, you keep depleting, and then hopefully you can get something to happen and finish them. What a mess. But we still, like Vespor said, gave this 2.5 because it did have some fun things. It had some fun ideas. And if you can't play a game, you can't enjoy it. So it's not going to get better than 2.5. So now, for game number 6, which is WCW Mayhem, released in September of 1999 in the North American market. WCW lost Aki as the one making that game, so they went to another big company at the time, Electronic Arts. So this is going to be a very, very different game, and it's an interesting game because they went a different style here. So they have this weird blue bar system, and it's kind of like how well are you doing with the crowd. So the more the crowd likes you, the more motivated you get, and the bar goes up, and then when you're not doing as well, you're not doing anything, the bar goes down, the bar goes down. So you want to try to get this weird excitement bar into the red, and that's when you're able to do all your stuff, the crowd's behind you, and then you can get the advantage over them. It was a weird system, but we give them credit because it was different. It was something fun. In a wrestling game, you don't want just a life bar. You want, hey, that's different, that's fun, you gotta do this, you gotta do that. But then you're taunting the whole time, you're trying to get big moves off, and it's just not as fulfilling a game as some of the better ones when you're doing all this, but at least it adds something. The wrestlers look very good and the graphics were impressive. I give them credit on that. So the commentary was here, but the PlayStation version was actually better because it had Bobby Heenan and Tony Schiavone. Now, due to limited space, they had to cut out Bobby Heenan altogether, which sucks because we love Bobby Heenan. So you're only gonna have Tony Schiavone saying the same statements he would if Bobby Heenan were there. So it's kind of awkward and weird, like he's talking to himself. I think if we played the PS1 version, we would have had a better experience than we had with this.
The biggest problem I had with this game is the fact that that motivation meter was your bane. You literally could not win unless you'd hit the max. Otherwise, they'd automatically kick out, no matter what. You may be getting your butt kicked, but guess what? If they don't have a max meter, you automatically kick them off at the 2 count. And the fact that you're playing a game of taunting instead of wrestling does take a lot away from the game. But it does have some intros to it, not the right music, but in the theme of it. This felt like a wrestling game, just a very complicated one where the moves work most of the time. You want to do a finishing move, well, guess what? Not only do you have to have full motivation for it, you have to know the right moves on your control pad to get this to go off so you can actually do it. Some saving graces to this game was the fact that you could go backstage and beat the crap out of somebody, then come back out. If you're lucky, you're going to throw them back there because sometimes they'll follow you back, other times they'll grab you and throw you back towards the ring.
Attitude meter is the downfall of this game. I think if they didn't have that attitude meter, this game might have been savable and it might have been a little better. But the fact that the whole game is based around this attitude meter, that downs it, and that's why we gave it 2.5 stars when all of a sudden done.
So now let's look at our number 7 wrestling retrospective on the N64, WWF WrestleMania 2000, released in November of '99, folks. We're going into the future here.
The future.
After losing wonderfully to WCW in the early days with THQ Aki, WWF finally learned its lesson, said, let's get THQ and Aki on this and make a wonderful game. And they did. At the cost of graphics, I'm more interested in the gameplay than the graphics. I could tell that this is Stone Cold and The Rock going at it. They have their taunts. They have their moves. I can do it. I can control it. I feel like I'm playing a game of wrestling. I feel like I'm the wrestlers. Albeit there were some problems with some of the modes, like Steel Cage Match, in which even the manual for the game doesn't tell you how to climb up and over. I cannot explain how frustrating it is when you go to a construction manual, they're like, use this button to climb the cage. I can't climb over it. Why can't I climb over it? This is definitely a 3.5 star game, and I love it because it's my favorite wrestlers from the WWF in their prime with many different modes.
Yeah, this is much improved, but at the same time, not as great as we hoped for. You know, this is also WWF's first time getting the Aki treatment, so there was some probably growing pains here where they had to change things differently to fit WWF's style here. But the game is still weird. You would think it would be as good as the WCW games, but it really isn't. And this is sort of a mixed bag. Some people love this game more. Some people feel like we do, that it's like a step downwards. It has all the same great stuff, but it was missing something. And the controls are the problem in this game. Those fluid and memorable controls that all the other games had, there's too much crypticness in this game. Things didn't work right. Some of the modes are weirdly implemented, but we didn't know how to do some of the things that you had to do in this game to get them to work. It was weird. So yeah, we looked at a lot of options. There was customization. We didn't really focus on it this time because we just wanted to have fun with the game. They had female and male wrestlers wrestling together. That was fun, so step in the right direction where people love to do that stuff. And again, the attitude meters were used right in this one where it was actually accurate to the Aki style. But it still was missing something. Now, the problem with this game is they didn't add anything here. So it's like, oh boy, WrestleMania 2000, but you don't feel like there's a WrestleMania game. This is not based on WrestleMania 2000. This came out months before WrestleMania 2000 roster was even known. This is just a rehash of Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, which we also reviewed. Stay tuned for that. Play this game, you feel like, wow, it's kind of limited. Oh, you can do this mode, that mode, and that's it. Oh, you can do the Road to WrestleMania, but that's it. It just didn't have enough. It didn't bring enough to the table. You want to make a new game. You want WWF to be like, here we are, we're now in the Aki thing, but you didn't add anything to it. It's such a bare minimum game that's still a lot of fun to play. It's good, but it's a little cryptic and a little annoying at times. So now we're going to move into number 8 of our N64 Wrestling Retrospective, and here we go again, Acclaim, and it's going to be ECW Hardcore Revolution released in February of 2000. And this is, believe it or not, another reskinned game. And you're like, how is that possible? This is ECW. Well, ECW was pretty much on the last stand here, and WWF got rid of them as the creator of the game, and WCW was using Electronic Arts. So where is Acclaim going to go? They're going to go to ECW, which is like, wow, the bottom of the barrel when you want to make a wrestling game. And yeah, this game comes off as a rehash, because all it is a rehash of WWF Attitude, which we already said wasn't a very good game. And you're taking an average game and making it even worse with less known wrestlers and less options, but you give it a mature rating. So this got an M rating for some strange unknown reason that we still to this day don't realize why this has an M rating, and we played many modes out of it. So this was part of our holiday celebration because this came in December of 2023. So this was a lot of fun, and in honor of that, we created a character who's going to become iconic now, Big Red, yes, which is a spoof of Santa and Ultimate Warrior, sort of, kind of. We made the best of this game. That's the best I could say. So the character creation, this sucked also, by the way, so we had to do so many things to make this thing look presentable, and that was another fun part of this. And we had more fun using this ridiculous Santa character than actually playing the game. That's how bad this game was. But again, it's another one of those deplete the meter and pin them type of games. Once you get them down to the black bar, that's it, they're done, and you pin them.
How could you just take one of the least popular games and just reskin it? Well, that's a claim for you, and quite literally, ECW Armbar Revolution, because now we have, like, barbed wire matches. Yay! With characters that nobody knows about. Even more yay!
Like Spike, the nerdy guy.
Raven and a few of the others came over from ECW, but the biggest problem with this game is gameplay. Remember, guys, you can take them backstage, if you're lucky, based on blood and violence. You know what? I'm trying to get their special moves to go off. Once again, whenever you have to do something like full circle, left, right, down, up, under the full moon during this time of the month to get your special off, it's not worth it. The fun part about this game was making fun of all this horse crap and the amount of arm bars that's going off, because everything almost always came out to an arm bar. This was absolutely ridiculous and did not feel like a wrestling game at all. And that's also why we gave this another wonderful rating of 1.5 stars. It got worse. Let's move on to an actual great game. Our number 9 in our retrospective, WWF No Mercy, released November 2000.
So here we go again with another THQ Aki game, and this is billed as the best of the best, and I don't know if I agree with that, but I will say yes, it's just as good as all the others. I don't know if it's better. They add some new extra features, so now you have intros. That was something that was missing from all these games. You have great music. You have improved GUI. It looks so much better now, the interface in this game. It has a lot of characters, it has a lot of options, it has a lot of customizations. We created like the weirdest looking wrestler you can create in this game, and it was still a lot of fun. So yeah, this game is good. All the moves are as you remember in all the Aki games, so that's great. I still don't think they brought enough to the table here to make this a 5-star, wow, this is the best I've ever seen. Is it 4? Yes, it's still a 4-star game. This is another one of those, if you love a fun wrestling game on the N64, you cannot go wrong with this game. You and a friend can have at it for a very long period and never grow tired of this game. And it had a lot of weird modes. It had that ladder match that was probably one of the worst matches we ever had to do, and it's sad to say that, but it wasn't fun. It needed to be a little more user-friendly, and it was almost there. It just didn't quite get there to be the best of the best wrestling game ever made.
Yes, this game, I would say, is nearing what I would expect from THQ and Aki at this time. It is absolutely a work of art. This unfortunately also carries with it the downsides of not telling you how to do things, like what you have to do on top of the ladder to grab the stupid case or the belt. That being said, there's so many upsides to this that it kept that 4-star, like replayability, do this, unlock that, and they had such a great roster and so many modes. Not all the modes were great, but they were still fun to play with. And you could even be the ref. You could sit there and just interfere to your heart's content, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to be the ref, so you have to count them out eventually. But just like any special ref match, you can wonderfully interfere, try to make sure your favorite wrestler wins. And you know what? They improved the graphics a little bit. It doesn't look nearly as blocky, and for that, I'm thankful.
Game number 10 in our Wrestling Retrospective, WCW Backstage Assault. And again, it's going to be made by Electronic Arts. And this is going to be pretty much the last hurrah for North American wrestling games. Released at the end of 2000 in December. And Electronic Arts decided, you know, we're going to go in a totally different direction. We introduced this whole backstage fighting gimmick, and we're going to make a whole game based around that. And on paper, that sounds like, hey, that could be interesting. That could be fun. That could be different. Well, it is different and interesting. Fun, I wouldn't say fun. Now, the problem with this game is the graphics are horrible. These wrestlers do not look like who they're supposed to be. We used Hulk Hogan in a match, and I thought, you've got to be kidding me. He looks like just some biker they grabbed off the street and are calling Hulk Hogan. Now, I know towards the end of his WCW run, things changed, and I have no idea, maybe he was using this look, but still, graphics were horrible. And then you had like lots of weird modes. You had female wrestlers going against male wrestlers in all these unlockable modes, which is ridiculous. They're so weak and pathetic, they couldn't do anything, and the guy's just beating them up, I'm like, how is this fun? This is stupid. And then you had to play like the story mode to unlock all the rooms, so otherwise you're locked into just one stage for the rest of the game. Yeah, the whole thing was just a strange game, but I don't think it's as bad as everyone says it is. I thought it was playable, it's fun for what it is, it's silly, it's stupid, you can invest some time into it, you wouldn't feel terrible owning this game. That's the way I looked at the game.
Yeah, this game really didn't feel like a wrestling game. It got some aspects right, like behind the stage, picking up 2x4s, chairs, crowbars, whatever. It did have that feel, and in that respect, it felt more like ECW than the ECW game did. But it gave you strange challenges to unlock different rooms, like lighting 2x4s over fires and things like that, throwing other wrestlers into other objects, and it felt more like a fighting game than a wrestling game. Another big problem was, if you wanted to unlock something, once you break that object in that room, it does not respawn. And pinning? Oh yeah, forget about that. Just knock them out with the 2x4 or throwing them into something. That is how you did it with this game. Compared to some of the other games we played, this was a diamond in the rough. Was this the worst out of all the games we played? No, not by a long shot.
And that's why we gave it 2.5 stars. You can laugh at that, but you try playing all 10 and then see what your opinions on it. Now, game number 11 in our retrospective was actually a translated version of an existing game called Virtual Pro Wrestling 2, which was released in Japan only in the year 2000. And somehow we were able to find an English translated mod, and whoever did the work, we appreciate it. You did a great job. Almost everything was understandable in the game after that was done. But WrestleMania 2000 is exactly this game. So this is the original version of what was WrestleMania 2000 on the N64. It had all the famous Japanese wrestlers, and it had the Japanese feel to it. A very huge roster. That was another very big pro to this game. And of course, if you played any of the other Aki games, it plays exactly the same. This game will keep you busy for a long time, and I can see that why this is one of the best wrestling games out there and why everyone wanted Virtual Pro Wrestling 2. But the worst part of this game was some of the characters sucked, and we didn't know who sucked and who didn't suck. And it looked like even the game itself acknowledged there are superstars and there are not as good stars.
But that's also why it was released in Japan. This game was something beyond just a little bit special. It had all kinds of modes, arenas, and a career mode in here that I was not even going to attempt to play because it would take too long. This game's gameplay, probably the smoothest of any of the THQ Aki gameplays. It was simply amazing, and it did set itself apart because of that. This game was just so amazing that you just need to play it. And that is why we gave it the highest rating that we could, 4.5 stars. If they could have made the graphics better, that would have been a 5-star game.
The graphics were just not that good. That was the problem with this game.
So now we move on, finally, to our last game, WWF Legends Challenge 64, and as a hack of WWF No Mercy.
Finally, an Aki game where the graphics are outstanding, and they have every classic character you can almost think of from the 80s and early 90s. And then they even had managers, and they had commentary going on. That's the best part. So you'd have Jesse the Body talking, you'd have Gorilla Monsoon, all in the background. It was amazing how they did this. This game takes a long time to get working because of all the things you have to do. You gotta download things, you gotta get it set up, but once you do, you can't have a better retro experience than this.
They even have people like King Kong Bundy, Big John Studd, and they also have Zeus from that little-known movie. Which one?
No Holds Barred, of course.
Right, and guess what? Look at this. Actual pictures, not drawings. And the gameplay is absolutely amazing in single player. This game is not yet quite there yet. The difficulty goes through the roof, but I mean, there's little things to it that you'll absolutely love. Like, you can choose like 6 different pants on Ravishing Rick Rude. And you know what? Do you remember this little thing about a steel cage match? You can actually walk out the door in this.
We had a lot of fun playing it, but hopefully in future updates they'll make it where it's not so impossible when you have more than one other opponent in the ring. It shouldn't be impossible like that. But yeah, this is great. Everyone has to check this game out. We're glad we ended our retrospective with this one.
When they actually come out to their music, you're like, this is the experience I want. This game is what you want to play. If you are a wrestling fan, you need to play this. We gave it a 4-star rating.
And we will check it out again soon. Just because our retrospective is over, they're going to keep on improving this game, and as they make changes, we'll take another look at it. We are glad that we finished our retrospective with this classic. Check out WWF Legends Challenge 64. And that's going to end our retroception of our N64 Retroception for Season 3. And what a season it was. This was great looking back at all of these N64 wrestling games and then a few bonus options as well. Guys, you don't know what you're missing if you haven't experienced wrestling on the Nintendo 64.
Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and
ring that bell, and we'll see you all next time. Again, we will look again at some more N64 wrestling, but it won't be in this format. It's just going to be, we're going to have fun and play some moments for the games, and that'll be it. And we hope you enjoyed. Let us know what you liked about our look back at wrestling, and let us know what you want to see in the future, as always. And we'll see you all next time here on Vesper's Retro Reviews. Take care, everyone.